My mother disapproved of all my girlfriends, except for one. Although I didn't really care about her opinion, it did make my life a bit easier knowing I no longer had to endure her constant criticism. The only girlfriend she approved of was Svetka, mainly because she was a medical worker, specifically a nurse. Ironically, she was also the most beautiful girl I had ever been with. According to my mother, she was just a regular snob. We lived together for about a year, and everything was going well. We even started discussing marriage and our future together. However, I was constantly stressed by her work schedule. Svetka worked in the gynecology emergency room, which meant her day shifts often got swapped with night shifts, and she would sometimes get called in on weekends or during her vacation time due to understaffing. This made it nearly impossible to plan anything, and it frustrated me. Our disagreements on this matter often led to arguments. Svetka didn't want to change her job. She was content with everything as it was. "I've dreamt of becoming a doctor since I was a child," she would say. "But you're not a doctor," I would retort. Granted, I later admitted that I was wrong in my approach, but I still longed to have her by my side more often than at work. At home, she was either busy with household chores or asleep after a long shift. But despite the challenges, I loved her and tried to minimize her responsibilities around the house. Meanwhile, my passion since I was young had always been motorcycles. Eventually, I fulfilled my dream of owning one. Svetka didn't mind my interest in riding. I was always careful, followed the rules, and never raced in the city. However, accidents do happen. Unfortunately, I found myself involved in one when a grandfather drove his car into me at an intersection, even though I had the green light. It wasn't entirely my fault, aside from going slightly over the speed limit, but that didn't protect me from getting fractures. And the bike was completely mangled. It's frightening to think about how much effort would be required to restore it. The ambulance arrived quickly and transported me to the hospital. I was relieved to discover that it was the hospital where Sveta worked. The fracture turned out to be severe, necessitating surgery and a lengthy rehabilitation period. I had to stay in the hospital for a long time. One could say that it was fortunate in a way. Sveta had the day off, but she still rushed to my side, trying to hold back tears. She cursed my bike and the driver responsible for the accident. "Come on, calm down," I attempted to soothe her. However, after the anesthesia, I didn't feel very well. "How can I calm down? Do you realize you may need another surgery?" she exclaimed, her voice filled with concern. "And the recovery." "True, but what matters is that I'm alive," I replied. "You're absolutely right," she agreed, kissing me and glancing at the monitors. "Well, at least you were brought here. I'll make sure everything is taken care of in the best way possible." She arranged for a private room and took care of everything. I resisted, as I disliked being alone, but they didn't ask for my input much, so I entertained myself by eavesdropping on the hospital gossip, of which there was quite a lot. The orderlies and nurses, who conveniently gathered near my room, enjoyed discussing both patients and their colleagues. There were some amusing incidents, but mostly it involved gossiping about other people's business, which I found distasteful. However, one nurse seemed to be the recurring topic of conversation. I couldn't help but wonder about the reason for such obvious irritation towards her. Later, I found out that she worked in a different department. Nikolai Palich, the subject of her encounters, was the respected head of traumatology, a virtuous doctor with a wife and 3 children at home. "No, but have you seen that woman?" The conversation started up again, just as I attempted to rest in the afternoon. She was with him again. "It's disgusting to watch." "So he doesn't mind much," the other voice chuckled. The first voice responded, "Well, what man would mind having his legs spread in front of him every time he meets?" They fell silent when footsteps approached in the corridor. After a while, Sveta entered my room, bringing mashed potatoes and cutlets. "I told you not to," I said, sitting up slightly on the bed. "Yeah, especially since I already had lunch," she replied. "Really? That junk food?" she exclaimed. "Yeah, just normal food," I replied. We chatted for a bit, and then Sveta left. An orderly, with a smile on her face, peeked into my room. "Was there a nurse?" she asked. Did she arrange a separate room for you? No, it's actually my fiancé, I replied. The woman seemed taken aback but resumed her work. Strange reactions were quite common around here. Later that night, I overheard an interesting conversation. Can you believe that girl has someone lying in here? The first voice said. Really? The second voice responded in surprise. Yeah, the guy in the private room with the accident fracture. The first voice explained. While he's lying there recovering, she's fooling around with another guy behind the wall. It's tough luck for him. Do you know how she managed to get him in that room? It was disgusting to listen to, especially when I realized they were talking about my soon-to-be wife. I felt a wave of nausea in my throat. The next day, I couldn't hold back my anger and threw my entire lunch in her face. Never let my eyes see you again, I scolded, watching the sauce splatter over her robe. What's wrong? She asked. Are you seriously sleeping around with a doctor, and you thought I wouldn't find out? I asked indignantly. What nonsense? What doctor? She replied in confusion. Nikolai Palikim, I responded. Her face turned pale, and she slowly sat down on the table. Get out, I shouted. I couldn't move, but I wanted nothing more than to physically throw her out the door. She left without saying a word. I remained in the hospital for 2 more weeks, enduring whispers and sympathetic glances from the orderlies. Their conversations revealed that Sveta had quit her job as rumors reached higher authorities, causing her lover's career to falter. She had left the keys to our apartment on the bed in the ward. I never saw her again, and honestly, I was glad. I heard rumors that she couldn't find work in her field since news spread quickly among them. But no one wanted to hire her for her specialty anyway.